I'll be showing you how to do Resident Evil style cameras in this tutorial fixed from position, so when you move into different boxes or different triggers, the camera will switch to a different angle. So let's start. First thing we need to do is add a player spawn into our level. So we're going to go up to the content browser, click Actor Classes. In the comment tab, go to Player Start, UDK Team Player Start, UT Team Player Start. Select it and then right click on where we want to place it and go Add UT Player Start, which will drop it into our level. Where sometimes you get this bad size problem, so if we move it up a bit and that adjust it, there we go, that's fixed. Now we need to rotate the pivot that the spawning player faces the way of the stairs. So if we rotate this so the arrows point into the stairs, center this up a bit. The next thing we need to do is start creating our trigger volumes for our level, so that when the player walks into those triggers, it will trigger the camera. And we're going to do this using the building brush, which is the red box. So I'm just going to reset my building brush. My one's at the back here. I'm going to move this over the top of where the player spawn is. If you go up to the geometry mode on the left here, a little box, and click it, you'll get this little option box pop up. What this does, this will allow us to edit the building brush. If I move the box out of the way and I select one side of the building brush, it'll highlight bright red. Now if I pull on the axis, it'll pull that face out. So I want to cover the whole starting area with this building box. And what I want to do is I want to pull this up to the top of the stairs, because I want a second camera to kick in when he hits the top of the stairs so that it be focused on the statue. And I want to make sure that it's tall, so if the character has a jump feature or anything, he won't ever be outside that trigger box. So I'm going to over exaggerate the height for a bit. Okay, that should do, so I can close geometry mode. And with the building brush done, if I go to the left hand side and in the volumes, go add volume, trigger volume. Now I click that, nothing happens, but if I move my building brush out of the way, we'll be left with this green box here, which is our trigger volume that we just created. Now with this, what I can do is I can right click it and I can copy, and then I can just right click again and click paste, and that'll paste it on top of where we just copied it from. So if we move this one out of the way, now this one I'm going to use as the trigger volume for when you hit the top of the stairs. And these are edited just like the building brush, so if we go into the geometry mode again and we select the face, we can just pull it in. And we want to make sure this is as close as we can get to the other trigger volume, because we want the triggers to kick in pretty fast when the player moves from different spaces. Move this in. I don't want this clipping on the top of the wall, because if the player walks up there, then it'll start triggering this again. And that should be about right. Okay, with that one done, I'm going to copy this one again by doing the same thing. Just right clicking, copy, and then I'm just going to paste it. It's pasted it on top of my previous one, so if I just move this out. And now go into the geometry tab again, geometry mode again, and just pull the boxes along so that it engulfs this whole top area. Pull this side out. These boxes can be tricky sometimes getting the faces. So there we go, we have that one covering it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this box, because I'm going to have the exact same trigger box on the opposite side. Paste it and just pull this one out and make sure it's covering the opposite side. But I'm not going to edit it because it's perfect the way it is. So now I have my trigger boxes. It's time to start adding the cameras for these boxes to relate to. If I go to the content browser, actor classes, select camera actor, and then just right click and go add camera actor here. Okay, so we have our camera here. Now I'm going to take control of this camera because I want to see it, so I'm going to click the little eye here, lock selected actors to camera, and then move around to whereabouts I want this camera to relate to. So I'm going to have this camera having kind of a dramatic shot when you spawn, right there, and if I click the eye again, I will lose control of the camera, and then you can see it dropped in a level. So I'm going to copy this camera by right clicking on it, copy in, and then paste in. It pastes it over the top, so once I've pasted it, if I click the eye again and move around, I'll take control of that camera, and then I can move that to where I want it. So I'm going to have this one facing the statue. I'm just going to click paste, click the eyeball tool again, and now I've taken control of this camera. I'm going to put this one at the top of the stairs here. And then click the eye again. There's our third camera in. Now I'm going to add our fourth. So same again, right click, paste, click the little eye at the top, and then move to where we want this one. So this one's going to be similar to the one over there. And that'll do. So untick the eye. There we are, we have all four of our cameras in. That all relate to their trigger boxes. Now it's time to start setting up the Kismet code for these triggers. If I open up Kismet by clicking the K, drag this out so I can see my screen. If I select my first trigger box, go back to Kismet, right click, and then go New Event using Trigger Volume, Touch. First thing I want to do in here is set the max trigger count down to 0, so no matter how many times the player character will walk in it, it will always trigger. Now I want to right click, add a new action, go cameras, set camera target, and then plug the touched into in of the camera target. Now I want to right click, add new variable, player, player. And with this I want to untick all players, so that's just player 0. So if we have bots in, they won't activate this. I'm going to plug instigator and target into this. Now we want to make sure we've got our first camera selected that relates to this trigger. So we're going to select it. And in the cam target, if we right click the purple button and go new object variable using camera actor, that will add our camera. So let's test this. First thing we want to do before we test this is make sure we got a character. So we go view, world properties, view, game type, and then in the default game type we want to make sure it's UT game, and in the pie we want to make sure it's UT game. Now if we click the little green button at the top, it'll open up, and there we go. Our first camera's working with our trigger. So we walk up here, our other triggers are not working, so we need to set them up now. So if we select our second trigger, trigger box, open up Kismet, and pretty much do the same. So we just right click, new event using trigger volume, and then touch. To make it a bit easier, we're just going to plug instigator into player, and we just select our set camera target from the last one, and Control C, and then just Control V to paste it in, and then just attach the cam target by holding Alt and clicking on it, and then plugging it into our touched of our new trigger volume. We're going to select our camera that relates to that trigger volume, right click on our cam target and add camera actor. Now if we click the green button again and run up these stairs, there you go, our second camera kicks in. But what we need to do is we need to make sure this trigger volume is also set to max trigger count 0. And we need to do that for every single part of the process now. So everything kind of gets samey here, so we just select our next trigger volume, do the same thing of adding new event using touch. And then setting the trigger counts down to 0 on both of them. And then just doing set camera targets. So we're just going to copy one and then paste it twice. And then just plug it into touched and do the... There we go, we have them all set up nice and proper. So we're going to make sure all the cameras relate to whichever trigger that they're triggering. Click our play button. And there we go, we have everything working. So, sorry about my bad navigation here, falling off the edge there because I have no collision box, but if I right click and play from here, sometimes you get this, but if you move forward, it'll trigger the volume. There you go, you can see our camera's kicking in, so everything's working fine. And that concludes our camera tutorial.